on the occasion of International Women's Day, I thought we'd have a conversation that is especially for all you superwomen out there. And I know what you're thinking. Personal finance concepts are the same irrespective of who it is applicable to. But at the same time, the application of those concepts changes based on your context. And your context as a woman, we must acknowledge it, is oftentimes different from that of the men out there. Join me to talk about this is Mrin Agarwal, the founder of Finsafe. Thank you so much, Mrin, for taking the time, and happy Women's Day to you as well.
Thank you, Alex. It's just lovely being here today on ET Now on Women's Day.
You know, before we get into the conversation about how women can manage their finances better, you've shared a few pointers that we will talk about in a lot more detail. But I want to ask about your journey first, because you've been in this line for quite a while, the investment advisory space. And I think beyond just advising, you also are an educator. You've worked very, very hard to educate women over the course of the last several years. What has your journey been like? Because I want my viewers to really be inspired by the work that you've done.
So my journey started 26 years back, and it was very interesting to get into the financial services space at that point. There were very few women actually on the investment advisory side, basically. So you do see a lot of women in operational roles across the financial services space, but very few women on the investment advisory side, and learned pretty much through getting my hands dirty. It was interesting because I did have the opportunity to join foreign banks, and the way of working and everything was so different out there. So it was interesting. Beyond a point, I felt that I should start off on my own. So after about 10, 12 years of working in various banks, I decided to set up my own multifamily office. And this was actually one of the first multifamily offices in India, where I was advising very high net worth clients on how to manage their money. Somewhere along the line, I always felt that women are never involved. So all my clients were men. I really did not have any women clients. And even with all the meetings that I would go to, typically, actually, the spouses of my clients were actually a little scared of me because they weren't sure what to talk with me. And, they would kind of shy from meeting me. And it was it took quite a lot to get them into the meetings. So all this really got me to think that women today can do everything, but they do have a tremendous mind block when it comes to managing money. And that's when I decided to start educating women on how to manage money. And as I went along, I figured out that if you look at financial literacy levels, they're really low. Most people do not know how to really manage their money well. And that includes the men as well. Like, there is this general belief that women don't know it. But honestly, I think everybody's in the same boat. And that's where I started Finsafe and gave up my advisory business to follow my passion of educating people. And the only reason I could do it was because I had managed my finances well and I was financially independent.
So fantastic. And that sets the stage, I think, for this conversation, Mrin, because the first point that you've shared with me is the importance of believing in your own abilities. And I think you mentioned this, a lot of the women that you've interacted with as well hesitate to trust themselves to manage money well. Whereas I think there are a lot of data points that prove that women are actually better money managers than men.
Oh, absolutely. Women tend to research more. Once they invest, they tend to stay invested for a longer period of time, and do not like to really trade or churn their portfolios too much. So I do believe that women can do it. It's just a question of equipping yourself with some knowledge.
Okay. So that's the first point, believing in your abilities. You've also said then the next point is don't contribute everything to a joint account or towards the expenses or to an EMI. I think the tendency for a lot of couples, especially in a situation where there is a family involved, that women tend to contribute either their entire salaries or most of their salaries towards the household expenses, or in fact give it to their partners to invest. They don't keep anything for themselves. They don't even invest for themselves. Is it important for them to carve out a niche for themselves?
Absolutely, Alex. As a part of our sessions, we run a survey where we ask women, what do you do with your income? And you'll be surprised to know that a majority of them say we keep some amount for ourselves and the balance is contributed towards the family expenses, which includes EMIs as well. So, my question to all the women out there is, imagine you worked for 10 years and you've been doing this. What do you have to show for yourself in terms of savings? Tomorrow, if you need money for something, where are you going to get that money from? Because you've spent all of your own income in expenses and EMIs. So I think it's really important, and it's not a question of being selfish. It's just a question of looking after your own well-being. I think it's good to contribute to the common expenses, but very importantly, it's income that you're earning, and hence you should be investing it in your name itself. Even for homemakers, I do truly believe that homemakers also should earn an income because they are contributing to the smooth running of the household. And if the activities that they were doing had to be done by somebody else, the family would actually end up spending much more. So I also do believe that homemakers should be given some sort of income from their spouse as well.
Okay, I want to get to that in just a short while, but first, on this same point of contributing a large portion of your salary, or in fact, I've met people that say that, I just put my entire salary towards investments and then my husband spends from his account on whatever expenses are during the month, right? What is the ideal way, Mrin, to do this? Should you save separately? Maybe you have the same investment options, but perhaps each individual saves on their own.
Yes, each individual needs to save on their own because it's their income. So they don't need to save separately on their own. They could be investing in the same set of funds. They could have a joint account for common expenses, for example, EMIs, the common household expenses, which are there every month, and also things like school fees and all of that. They could have a common account for that, but very importantly, they need to be saving it and investing in their own names.
Okay, I want to come to the third point, which you say is save, 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 and for the household or the homemakers, they should get a stipend. You alluded to this in the previous point, but I think it's important to stress this very, very strongly. There is a feeling, and I have also interacted with a lot of women, Mrin, who feel uncomfortable with the idea that they have to ask their partners for money if they have to buy a pair of shoes or if they have to buy clothes. That's an unfortunate reality of quite a few families. Do you think that that should change as soon as possible?
Oh, yes. I think everybody is entitled to spend some money on themselves and have some fun. I mean, after all, why are we, earning money, and what else are we going to do? I mean, I know you have your financial goals, but you also need to enjoy your life, right? So I think it's very important that have a conversation with the spouse and draw out a discretionary spending budget. So this is an amount that's available to each one of you to spend the way you want to, without any questions asked, without any judgment, right? And I think that's really important. And again, coming to the point for homemakers, also you must remember that the homemaker also has her own set of expenses that she needs to do. So certainly this is why it is very important to also have the homemaker have some sort of stipend or some sort of income coming in from the spouse.
And I've also, on the other side, to be fair, the men have said that they have a debit card and they have access to the accounts. But I don't think, Mrin, it's the same thing, right? You can call money your own when you have it in your own account. I think that's my opinion anyway. Let's talk about the next point, which is to be prepared for uncertainty. And I think this pandemic has taught us a lot of things to be prepared, but women don't necessarily have the same kind of cover that men have, and we've spoken about that on this platform as well, which is it's important for women also to start getting health insurance covers, to start getting term insurance covers. How important on a scale of 1 to 10 is this, Mrin?
I would say it's very important. On a scale of 10, certainly 8 or 9. A lot of women believe that they are not the prime earning members and hence they don't need the type of life insurance that their spouses have, or even the type of health insurance that their spouses have. But as far as health insurance is concerned, what you must remember is that either of you could fall sick. And today, the cost of treating a lot of illnesses is extremely, extremely high. So if both of you do not have the right amount of health insurance, then it's going to be really tough and it's going to be a real big drain on family finances. So certainly women need to be adequately covered for health insurance. And also as far as life insurance is concerned, and always, again, there's this question saying that if the prime earning member is covered, that is more important. But imagine if the woman is not covered, again, whatever the woman was providing in terms of her income contribution to the family or her other contributions to the family will have to be replaced in case the woman is no more. And and that is why you need the life insurance cover for the women as well. There's another point that I would like women to think about over here, which is that if you buy a life insurance cover for yourself, nominate your children as the nominees, right? So this can provide financial security to the children after you're gone. So these are some reasons why women also need to take adequate amount of covers as well.
No, it's a very fair point and very important to consider as well. The fifth point that you've spoken about is retirement and planning for retirement. In a sense, Mrin, this is similar to the conversation that we have on an ongoing basis. But why specifically have you mentioned this point in the context of women?
So in retirement, there's one common thing, which is to meet the family's expenses, right? Which is the day-to-day expenses. But everybody has aspirations of their own. And I'm sure that women, whether they're working or they're not working, also have various dreams and aspirations that they want to fulfill after their other responsibilities get over, right? And hence, I believe that that's what women need to also plan for. Of course, they need to contribute towards the family expenses at the time of retirement. So they need to plan for that. But I think, they also need to add whatever amount they need for their aspirations to this particular amount. And that's why I believe that it's very important that they plan for retirement as well.
Okay. In that context, would you say, and this is coming to your sixth point, which is to have an adequate exposure to equity. Do you think that women are generally more risk averse and tend to have lower exposure and therefore they should reconsider their allocation towards equity?
So most women prefer traditional products. The problem with traditional products is that they don't really help you beat inflation. And what that really means is that your money is not growing. If your money is not growing, how are you going to fulfill all your goals and your wishes, right? The only way that you can do it is take some amount of risk and take the right risk, right? So I'm not saying get into things like cryptocurrencies or NFTs, which can be highly volatile. The Indian equity markets have so much of data behind them now. They've been around for such a long time. And you do have the option of investing through a mutual fund where you have a professional fund manager who's going to decide where to invest into, when to rebalance and all of that, right? So you do have options to take the right amount of risk through the right instruments today, which is really mutual funds. And you should take some risk, because that's the only way that you can really grow the money. Just with traditional safe investments, it's not going to be possible to grow your money because of inflation.
Okay. The last point has to do with access to financial documents, and I think you feel very strongly about this. Knowledge is the most important thing when you're talking about planning your finances, right? So this, I think, is a very important edifice of the entire planning process.
Yes, that's absolutely right. So it's important to build some knowledge, read up regularly about personal finance, also have access to the family's financial documents. So in the second wave of COVID, we had a lot of calls from women asking us, how can I access the documents? Because I don't know where these documents are, and I don't know how to deal with these documents, and I don't have access to the online account, login IDs and passwords. So what do I do? How do I go ahead and make claims, right? So imagine, like, you're already facing emotional trauma of losing a loved one, and then you really don't know where documents are and how to go about things. So I think it's really important that, while we may have forgotten the second wave of COVID, it really taught us everything about being prepared for uncertainties, right? And I think it's very, very important that you spend some time trying to understand the family finances. Maybe make a whole list of it. Make a list of all the login IDs and the passwords or the account numbers, and keep it in a safe place, so that if there is an unfortunate situation, then you are at least prepared for that situation.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of these topics that we've discussed, a lot of the points that you have made are applicable to both men and women, because men have to facilitate this. Women have to ensure that the men facilitate this. And thank you so much, Mrin, for taking the time. Always a pleasure speaking with you.
Thank you, Alex.